All right, so let's picture this. You're heading into surgery. What comes to mind? Probably a super sterile, controlled room, right? A safe little bubble where all that matters is healing. But what if the biggest threat to your recovery wasn't in that room at all? What if it's literally floating in the air right outside the window?
Yeah, kind of creepy to think about, isn't it? You're there trying to get better, and the city smog could be actively messing with your recovery? Well, that unsettling idea is exactly what a group of researchers decided to investigate. And believe me, what they discovered is, wow, it's pretty wild.
Okay, so the big bad we're talking about here is something called a surgical site infection, or an SSI for short. And these things are no joke. They can take a totally routine surgery and turn it into a huge, long-term ordeal. So you can see why doctors and hospitals are obsessed with preventing them.
So, in the hunt to stop these infections, scientists started thinking outside the box. They realized they'd been focusing on all the usual suspects. You know, the sterilized tools, the hand washing. But what if the culprit was hiding in plain sight? What if it was this invisible threat all around us, the air pollution in our cities?
And that's what led to this really groundbreaking study. They decided to zoom in on Shanghai, a massive megacity, and look at a very specific group, teenagers getting orthopedic surgery. And they asked this wild question: could the smog they're breathing on the actual day of their surgery, could that really make them more likely to get an infection? To get to the bottom of this, they didn't mess around. They launched this huge investigation, digging through years and years of data. And we're not just talking about broad trends here. No, they got super granular, looking at the daily air quality reports and matching them up, one by one, with the medical records of thousands of patients. I mean, just look at the sheer scale of this thing. It's staggering. Over 32,000 patients, followed for 5 years. They took all this data, we're talking daily pollution levels, weather, infection rates, the whole shebang, and fed it into this incredibly smart deep learning AI. The idea was to let the machine find patterns that a human researcher might just completely miss. So who were the main suspects in this pollution lineup? Well, the AI was told to focus on these 3 key players. First, you've got nitrogen dioxide and sulfur dioxide. These are your classic villains, coming from stuff like traffic and industry. Then you have ground-level ozone, which is basically the main ingredient in smog. We already know these guys are bad for us, right? They cause inflammation, they stress out the body. The big question was, is that stress enough to actually derail a surgical recovery?
All right, so the AI crunched the numbers, and the first results started rolling in. And at first, it looked like they confirmed exactly what you'd expect. 2 of those pollutants were, without a doubt, bad news for patients.
Let's start with nitrogen dioxide. The pattern was crystal clear. On days with higher NO2 pollution, the rates of surgical infections also went up. For every little bump in this pollutant, the risk for a patient climbed by almost 3%. That's a real, measurable impact. And it was pretty much the exact same story for sulfur dioxide. A jump in SO2 meant a 2.5% jump in infection risk. So yeah, these 2 gases, the stuff pouring out of our cars and factories, they are definitely the bad guys in this story. They cause this inflammation throughout the body, which basically just ties one hand behind the back of your immune system right when you need it to be at full strength.
But here's the part that really gets you, the most alarming conclusion from the study. The researchers found no safe level. Let that sink in. For nitrogen dioxide and sulfur dioxide, it's not like there's a safe amount. Any exposure seems to increase the risk. There's just no threshold where you're in the clear.
Okay, so we've got our 2 villains identified. Case closed, right? Not so fast, because when the AI looked at that third pollutant, well, it found something that nobody could have predicted, a total plot twist.
So let's recap. We have our bad guys, NO2 and SO2. They clearly push the infection risk up. So what about our third character, ozone? I mean, it's a key part of smog. You'd naturally assume it's just as bad, or maybe even worse, right?
Wrong. Look at this number. The data showed the exact opposite. When ozone levels went up, the risk of infection went down by almost 2.4%. And yes, you are reading that minus sign correctly. A pollutant was actually associated with a protective effect. How is that possible?
This is the central mystery of the whole study. How on earth can a pollutant, something we know is bad for us, actually seem to help patients avoid infections? Makes no sense, or does it?
Okay, to unravel this puzzle, we have to look a little closer at what ozone actually is and what it does.
The answer, it turns out, is all about the strange, two-faced nature of ozone. So here's the deal. In the short term, ozone is a killer. I mean that literally. It's a powerful disinfectant that just wipes out bacteria and other nasty microbes in the air. So on the day of surgery, having more ozone around might actually be cleaning the air right around the patient's wound. But, and this is a huge but, that doesn't make it good for you. Long term, it's still super toxic, it wrecks your lungs, it weakens your immune system. What this study likely picked up on was just that powerful temporary disinfectant effect.
So, what's the bottom line here? What do we take away from all this? Well, first, the air we breathe every day is a huge and mostly ignored factor in how we heal from surgery. Second, for those bad guys, NO2 and SO2, there's no safe dose. The danger starts with molecule number 1. And third, the study pinpointed a particularly vulnerable group, kids between the ages of 7 and 14. And remember, this isn't just a theory. It's a rock-solid pattern they found in data from over 32,000 people.
But here's the really good news. This isn't just interesting data. It points to actual, actionable solutions. Hospitals could start putting in real-time air quality monitors in their surgical wards. They could upgrade their filtration systems to specifically target these nasty gases. And get this, they could even look at the pollution forecast when scheduling elective surgeries, maybe avoiding the smoggiest days. These are real, practical things we can do to make surgery safer.
And that really leaves us with one last big question to chew on. If the everyday air in a city can have such a clear, measurable effect on something as precise and controlled as a surgical recovery, what other invisible environmental factors are out there, shaping our health every single day in ways we haven't even thought to look for yet?